Okay, hello, Puffins. I'm Julia Edwards. You've just written to me about this book. Um, I got a big bundle of letters through the post yesterday, and I'm just so pleased. So thank you very, very much for taking the time and the trouble to write to me. It's I can't tell you, it's so nice because it's really quite a lonely business sometimes being an author. I sit here in my office. This is my office. You can't see very much of it behind me, but there's some books, and actually there's a wooden giraffe in the corner. It's just slightly hidden by my chair. Um, and I sit here working on the book that I'm writing at the moment. I'm writing something called The Idiot's Guide to Grave Robbing at the moment. So, yes, to get a whole load of letters from children who've been reading one of my books is really, really nice. The reason I am... Ooh, that's a lorry going past. It suddenly goes a bit dark, doesn't it? The reason that I am sending you a video is because you have asked me so many questions that it would take me a very, very long time to write a letter that answered them all. So I thought I would send a video. So yes, thank you. Lots of lovely letters. Lovely letter here from Dulcie. Thank you very much, Dulcie May. That's really nice. I'm really glad that you enjoyed The Left in the Golden Cage and that you like the name that I chose for Joe. Lots of you asked about names. So I've got one here from Scarlet Rose. You've asked, where did I get all the names from? I found a piece of paper. I was looking yesterday when I got your letters in my file. And this piece of paper where I was trying out the different names, because for Roman times, the Romans were around for 1,000 years and they had rules about how to name their children, different rules for boys and for girls. And also over that 1,000-year period, it was 500 years of republic and 500 years of empire, the rules changed. And I knew I needed to get it right for the time that this book takes place, which is in AD 82. So, and also they had to be convertible, because I knew I was going to write more books. So you've read this one. Then we've got this one, Saving the Unicorn's Horn. This is set in Viking times, but Lucy is still there, and so are all of her family. So I had to be able to change their names into Viking names. Then we get Tudors, the Falconer's Quarry. It's still Jo, still Lucy and her family. So now their names needed to become English. Their names didn't need to change again after that. We've got The Demon in the Embers, so this is The Great Fire of London. We've got The Shimmer on the Glass, this is Victorians. Oh, no, wait a minute, I've picked them up in the wrong order. This is book 5, this is The Slave Trade. This one's set in Bristol. So Lucy's family is a very wealthy family in Bristol. Then we've got The Shimmer on the Glass, which is Victorians. That one's set down in Cornwall. And then we come right up close to modern times with World War II. This one's set in Liverpool. So I knew that with having all these characters going through the series, that I had to have names that could change. And that actually also went for Jo, to have a name that wouldn't stand out in most times. And because Jo is short for Joseph, and of course that's a name from the Bible, I knew that for a lot of time that would work, although I still needed to change it slightly for Romans and Vikings, which is why Lucy invents a name. I think she says he's Jovinus. Anyway, so yeah, names were really tricky. Scarlett also said, did I like writing the book? Yes, I did like writing the book, although writing first drafts is hard, even though I am a writer. Writing first drafts is hard. Actually, what I really like is editing, which is where you take what you've already written and you go over it all and you get rid of all the mistakes and you just try and make it better. I'm busy doing that on the book I'm writing at the moment, and actually that's a bit I really like. Scarlett Rose, you also asked how old is Lucy's mother in the story. Lots of you asked about ages. This was interesting. So Helena Calvina, I reckon in this story she must be 39. It doesn't say that anywhere in the book, but because Lucy's mum comes up again in the other books later in the series, I did have to work out how old she was. Lots of you asked about ages. So all the children's ages are in there. So Antonia is 8, Lucy's 10, Jo is nearly 11. Sallustia, Petrus comes next in Lucy's family. He's 12. Then we've got Seleucia, who's nearly 14, even though she's about to be married. Then we've got Tiberius, who's adopted, isn't he? He's 15. Then we've got Marius, who's 16. And then Helena Calvina, the mother, is 39, and I reckon that Lucullus was 43. So, yes, we don't know. Lucullus is the only person who actually existed. Gaius Sallustius Lucullus actually existed. He is a real person, but we don't know exactly when he was born, although we do know how he died, and that's what Jo finds out in that book. I'll come back to that in a minute. Then we've got Iris, wanting to know what inspired me to write The Leopard in the Golden Cage. I decided to write this when my son, who is now 16, was 5, because I wanted to write some time travel for him, because I love the idea of going back in time. I'm that person who, if I go to a ruined castle, I stand there and close my eyes and try and imagine it, with all the people coming and going, with barrels being rolled around and horses being led in, and people doing all their chores that they needed to do, and then the rich people all swanning around. So yeah, that's what I thought of. How do I know so much about the Romans? I went away and found out a lot about the Romans. Things like, a lot of you commented that your favourite bits were things like him having his hair dyed. Somebody did a lovely picture of him having his hair dyed. I loved that. The recipe for the hair dye, the recipe for the toothpaste, I found those in books on Roman housekeeping. So I went and did lots of research, but I did also get somebody to check it afterwards, because I'm not an expert, and I've written now 7 books in 7 different periods of time, and I can't be an expert in all of those. So I always get them checked by somebody. Iris, you've also asked, did I actually go to the ruins of Fishbourne? I actually did, when I was 9. That was one of the things that made me think about setting this book here at Fishbourne. I went on a school trip when I was 9 years old, and I bought a postcard with that picture of the mosaic, you know, the one that Jo talks about at the beginning, of the boy riding the dolphin. I bought a postcard because that struck me as a slightly strange picture, and I still had it, however many years later, when I started to write this book. I've got a letter here from Maya, or Maya, sorry, I don't know how you pronounce it. I like the fact that your favourite part was when Jo got stabbed in the leg. But what happened to Tiberius, and where did he go? That's a very good question. We don't know for certain, do we? But I think he probably went off to Rome. He was going to try to get himself adopted by the Emperor Domitian to be his adoptive son, because he thought he might be his heir and therefore become emperor next. We know that didn't work, though, because the next emperor after Domitian is Trajan, not Tiberius. So I think he will have gone to Rome, but I don't think he succeeded in persuading Domitian to adopt him. Okay, we've got Polly. Why is the book called The Leopard in the Golden Cage if it only includes it at the middle, at the middle end? I know what you mean there. Actually, it's called The Leopard in the Golden Cage because that's a metaphor. So that's when we use one way of saying something to explain something else. So I can just hear the cats. I've got 2 kittens, they're mewing outside my office door. So the leopard in the golden cage is this beautiful creature in this beautiful cage. Lucy, for me, is like the leopard. She is trapped in this palace, in this lovely, luxurious life, but she can't do everything she wants to do, can she? She's, she can't learn to ride, she can't learn to swim, she's got to do all the girly stuff. It wouldn't be like that today. Who let the leopard out of the cage? This is a very good question. I think that it was Tiberius. I know that Jo says he doesn't think he did it, but I think he did. The fact that he so readily blamed Jo, I think Jo is mistaken to think it wasn't him. Tiberius is there to make trouble, so that's who I think did it. Did he get punished? Did Tiberius get punished for lying and trying to cut Lucy's face? I suspect he was simply sent away, which in a way is a kind of punishment. I suspect that Lucullus sent him away, or he went of his own accord. So probably not a proper punishment, really. Bella would like to ask, does Jo come back? Well, yes, in 6 other books, as I showed you. And I would like to ask, did Lucy get better? Yes, I think she probably did. She wasn't really ill anyway. She was just shut up, wasn't she? Okay, how are we going? I've been talking to you for 10 minutes. This is why I didn't write it as a letter. Okay. Sibby, I was wondering if Lucy got chosen to be the companion. I think Lucy wouldn't have wanted to be the companion. I don't think she would want to go and move to a different country. She's only 10, isn't she? To go and live with as the companion to a woman she doesn't know. She already lives a life of luxury, so there's not much incentive for her. So I think not. Did Joe and Lucy meet again? Yes, in all the other books, many, many times. Who let the leopard out of the cage? I think Tiberius. Could Lucy go to Joe's time? Aha. Well, you'll have to read through the series to find out the answer to that question. Okay. Then we've got Rory Welland. I think there are 2 Rorys on there. Okay, so why is Tiberius so angry? I think Tiberius is so angry because he felt rejected by his own family, because his father had died and his mother rejected him. And I think that's one of the things that makes him angry. How long did it take me to publish the book? Writing the book took about 3 months to write the first draft, and then 3 months to do another rewrite. So at least 6 months, and plus 3 months of research. So 9 months to write it. But because I'm an independent author these days, you can actually publish books without having to go to a big publishing house. As soon as it was ready and I had had it checked and I'd done all the revisions of it, I'd rewritten it and I'd got the cover, then I could actually just get it published straight away. But the whole process probably took me about a year. Were the characters based on real characters? Only Sallustius Lucullus, Gaius Sallustius Lucullus, Lucy's father. He is a real person, and it is possible that he owned Fishbourne Palace. I found that out when I went to do my research there. How old are the main characters? So we've touched on that, not including the slaves except for Arethusa. So I had to look at Arethusa up. I think she's 23. She reappears. Almost everybody who's everybody who's named in any of the books reappears later in the series, at least once. Okay. Right. How are we doing? 12.5 minutes. I was wondering, says Lily, why did you set it in Roman times? I wanted to do a whole series of time travel. I knew right from the beginning there were going to be 7 books. I knew I needed to start at the beginning and move through time, because sometimes you learn about Victorians before you learn about Vikings or whatever. I learnt about bits of history all muddled up, so I wanted to move through time, so I wanted to start in Roman times. I could have gone earlier. I could have started in the Stone Age or the Iron Age or the Bronze Age, but I decided to start in Roman times. Did I make up the names or were they real? I made up the people. The names were right for the time that this book is set. Did Lucullus trust Joe? Yes, I think he did, actually. Funnily enough, the reason he trusted him is because Tiberius made Joe bleed. I think that made all the difference. Who let the leopard out of the cage? Tiberius, I'm sure. And why is Tiberius so mean? So that's like Rory's question. I think he's embittered because he feels rejected. Okay, Francesca. Oh, you've asked also... oh yes, you said you liked the weird tooth-based medicine and hair dye. Yeah, me too. I love those bits. You've asked if Tiberius got punished. Probably not. Not really. Not properly. Did Lucy come with Joe? Well, Lucy is going to be allowed out of the hospital, but she doesn't come back with Joe to his time, does she, at the end of the book? Did Tiberius get chosen? No, I don't think he can have done. Like I said, Trajan was the next emperor. Did Lucy like her mum? A couple of you have asked that, and also did Lucy's mum love her? I know why you've asked that, because she feels very remote, doesn't she? She's not very loving and not very friendly. I think in the past it was often like this with rich families, that the children were brought up by somebody else. So Arethusa will have brought up Lucy. like a nanny, or like a nanny basically. So I think that Lucy probably does love her mother, and her mother does love Lucy, but that they don't have a very close relationship. As they go through the books, as we go through the series, and they live in a completely different way. So when they're Vikings, they're very poor. They live really close together, and it becomes a much closer, more to us, more normal relationship. What was my favourite part? I do love all the stuff like the hair dye. I have to say, I do love all that, and the bit with the loo. I like the bit with the loo. Yes, Iris Simpson. Oh, there were two Irises. Sorry, I didn't notice what the other Iris surname. Iris Simpson, you've also asked what's my favourite part. I think probably is the bit with the loo. When I go into schools, I always talk about that. Then we got Rory L. Okay. What made me use a leopard, and is it a usual gift? That's a very interesting question, and a lovely picture of a leopard to go with it. So I chose a leopard because we do know that in the past, certainly we know that later on, kings and queens were sometimes given rare and beautiful animals as gifts. So, for example, the Tower of London used to be a menagerie, so a collection of animals, and it started off with King John, who'd been given some lions and some bears. So I thought that was a plausible gift, an exotic animal, and I knew that the Romans had been in North Africa because there are Roman remains in places like Tunisia. So I knew that they had been in Africa and therefore might have seen leopards. So yes, that was the reason. And the other reason, I suppose, is that I chose it is that it's, when you're looking for a title, you look for words that both look and sound nice, pleasing, and leopard is one. Okay, Zachary. Does Joe see Lucy again? Yes, he does. Do I like history? Yes, I love it. I had a really good history teacher when I was at secondary school, and I love it. What's my favourite book I've written? Well, of these books, the one I'm proudest of is this one, because this is about something really important. It was also really interesting to write this one about the Great Fire of London. Excuse me. I've written another book, which is short stories. This was really good fun to write. This is nothing to do with history. It's completely separate. They're 13 short stories about children who get their own back on other kids or teachers or parents. So that was the most fun to write. Who let the leopard out? Tiberius. Did Tiberius get punished? No. Am I going to write another series? Well, after 7 books, I did say never again, but actually quite recently I decided I think I might do something more with Joe and Lucy and send them off to ancient Maya and ancient Egypt and possibly to the Shang dynasty or ancient Benin in Africa, because those are periods and places you have to learn about in school in history, and there are no books to make that easy. You know, it's much easier if you've got a book to make, to make a story to tell you the stuff. Okay, I'm sorry, this is getting very long. 18 minutes. Okay, who have we got here? Zachary Silver. How long did it take me to write? So about 6 months in total. 3 months to write and then 3 months to rewrite. Did this actually happen with no teleporting? Well, I suppose Joe does sort of teleport, doesn't he? That's what the St. Christopher does. How many books have I written? So there are the 7 Scargatherer books. There's Unlucky for Some. Then there's a book for adults called Time Was Away. Those are all published, so that's 9. There's one in the attic that's never coming out, so I don't really count that. Then I'm most of the way through writing The Idiot's Guide to Grave Robbing. I've also got another book for slightly older kids, maybe teenagers, called Hunting the Butterfly. Neither of those are finished. So that's another 2. So 9 that are published, plus 2 more. Have I been to Fishbourne? Yes, when I was 9. And how long have I been writing for? Well, I actually only really started in my 20s. I mean, I learnt to write at school like you're doing, but I never thought of doing it as a job until I was in my 20s. So yeah, So quite a long time all the same. The first book of these came out, The Leopard in the Golden Cage came out just before my youngest son was born, and he's now in year 6, so it came out in 2014. So 10 years since the first book came out, and I got a good sort of... I'd been writing other things. I wrote Time Was Way before that, so I've been writing for at least 15 years. Okay, LV... does Lucy go to Joe's time when Joe goes to school? Now that would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? So that doesn't happen, but you will have to see what does. Okay, then we've got Isla, who you've also asked who let the leopard out, but you've also asked why did Tiberius's real mum and dad not want him, but they wanted his sisters. Well, so his dad died, his real mum kept his sisters and didn't want him. But when you hear the way he talks about women and girls and what a waste of time they are and how nobody needs them, he's horrible about girls and women. And maybe that's why his mum didn't want him and his sisters didn't want him. It's hard to say. Is he horrible about women because they didn't want him? Or did they not want him because he was horrible about women? I think he's just one of those people who thinks that boys and men are better, rather than realising that everybody's as good as everybody else. And all you have to be in life is kind. How did Joe lose his St. Christopher in the first place? Well, the St. Christopher, as it hit the mosaic, must have dropped through time before Joe climbed down to look for it. Because Lucy subsequently finds it and gives it back to him. Does Joe ever go back? Not to Roman times, but to other times. Right, nearly there. Those of you who haven't got to yet, been very patient. Tom, you've drawn a picture of Joe dropping his St. Christopher. Questions are, what would happen if Joe time travels at school? This does happen in a later book. I think it's either in the second or third book, so you'll have to read one of those and find out. What would happen if Lucy went to Joe's time? Well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Again, you'll have to read the series if you want to know how it all ties together. What would happen if Joe never went back to Joe's time? Well, that's something he fears, isn't it, during The Leopard in the Golden Cage. And he's afraid that he won't be able to get back, but fortunately he does. I don't know what would happen. I actually think you don't want to get stuck in the past. I've concluded from writing these books it's great to visit, but you don't want to stay. Nellie, why was Tiberius so rude? Well, I think he's not a very nice person, basically. How long have I been writing for? Like I said, it's about 15 years, 15 or 20 years, something like that. Why did I have the leopard later in the book? Actually, there was no leopard at all in the first draft of this book. I added the leopard in when I thought of the title, because I thought of the title and thought of it like a metaphor, like I was saying. And then I thought, the wedding, that would work. And actually the book got much better as a result. Okay, Joseph, you've also asked who opened the cage. I bet it was Tiberius. Did Lucy become companion to the emperor's wife? I just don't think she would have wanted to. Maybe Sallustia did. Sallustia has just escaped being married off to that horrible, horrible man. So maybe she would want to. Perhaps it would be better for her than the alternative. Did Lucullus die of old age or not? This one I can answer for certain. Definitely not. He was put to death. He was killed, executed by Domitian, and he won't have been old at that point. So no, he did not die of old age. I don't think we know how he was executed. Don't think we know how Domitian had it done. Apparently it was to do with the naming of a lance, but that sounds, like Joe's dad says, that sounds like a made-up excuse. Last one, Liam. What is it like writing? Some days it's really, really hard, I have to admit. But other days it's good and it all flows. And changing stuff, the editing I do to change to make it better, I enjoy that. And that's much easier. than the writing stuff for the first time. Do you know where in Britannia they were? Well, so Fishbourne is down in the south. The Romans actually got all the way up to Hadrian's Wall. So they didn't get into Scotland, and they didn't get out into very far into Wales, although you do have Caerleon, which is a Roman fort. So they got partly into Wales, not much down into Cornwall either. So the sort of edges of the country they didn't quite get to, or not as thoroughly. What was the other slave's name in the hospital? I think I'd run out of naming people by then, so late in the book, because by the time you get towards the end of the book, a character isn't going to be very important. So I don't really know, because privatus, as Lucy observes, is a common name for slaves, but that's a male name, and the nurse in the hospital was not a man. So actually I don't know the answer to that one. So I'm really sorry that this took so long. This is why I didn't write you a letter, because I've now been talking to you for nearly half an hour. So I hope that answers your questions. I hope that some of you might feel like reading the other books in the series. If you look at my website, it's called juliaedwardsbooks.com. You can order the books from there, and I'll sign them for you, and they'll come to your house. There's also, under the extras on that website, there's a bit about Joe and Lucy, and there's a whole bit about all the history of all the different books. So there's a whole section on Romans, and there's a section on Vikings and Tudors and so on and so forth. So there's absolutely loads on there, and lots of bits about all the other books that I've written. So if you're interested in having a look, you can go away and look up juliaedwardsbooks.com. All right. Thank you very, very much for all your letters. I really enjoyed them. There were some lovely pictures. I know I've commented on some, but there were many lovely pictures of leopards and some nice book covers. And there was even one of Tiberius, who I don't think has ever been drawn. So, yeah, they were great. Thank you. You really made my day. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the book. And, yeah, if you read any of the others and you feel like writing to me, feel free. Bye.